Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week we interview film professionals to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by cinematographer Michael Dallatorre, whose work includes Studio 666, Brightburn, and more recently Emergency, among many other great films. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Oh, thank you for having me.
I have to ask you about Studio 666.
Sure.
I guess my first question is, it seems like they don't make these types of films anymore. So if you think about like Rock and Roll High School, you think about Into the Never by Metallica, like they don't make rock band movies. So how did this get made if like studios aren't pushing for that?
Well, I mean, it got made because Dave Grohl is just, he's his own powerhouse. He gets this idea and he goes for it and he goes 100%. And so he's got producers that have worked with him on the documentaries and everything. And so the band funded it themselves, which actually made it kind of interesting because we didn't have like a studio or like a production company that was like what you would normally go through. And so there were a lot of times where we were like, on a normal production, we would say, okay, we want to do this thing. And then we have to like work it up the chain. This was just kind of like, all right, well, we're going to cut someone's head off with a symbol or whatever. And they're like, okay, so it was actually pretty freeing, to do that. But it all goes down to Dave and the band being like, just, down to like do it and have faith in that we were going to help them put something really cool together.
Now there was a lot of like special effects, but were there a lot of, it felt more like, I don't want to say a grindhouse, but like, was there a lot of practical effects on set, and how did you work with that?
Yeah, it was mostly practical effects. BJ McDonald, our director, is a big fan of like kind of the vintage horror stuff and doing practicals as much as we can, and also like Dave Grohl also just very much liked all that kind of stuff. We had Tony Gardner, who was our prosthetics and special effects like person that just made amazing prosthetics and things like that. And we thought it just would be a lot funner. It's also it's also technically easier, and it plays back to like the look of those kind of films, and the feel of those films, where it's just kind of, we knew what we were making. It was something that was going to be fun and not, we weren't, like campy and had interesting moments, and that really sold that to us. There are some visual effects when stuff happens, to like paint people out, like when spoiler alert, when Will Forte gets his head chopped off, there's like 4 people surrounding him.
Yeah.
Or surrounding that animatronic that just working all the different things. So they were painted out in the thing, as long as they weren't within the area. So there was a little bit of, there was the effects that needed to be done, additional smoke on the old band that was haunting the house and things like that. But the practical stuff was really pretty awesome, and it looked great just on its own.
Now, apparently Dave Grohl came up with this idea when they were recording at a house that was haunted. Did you guys shoot in the same house, or was it a set that you guys built?
Yeah, no, actually, I met BJ at that house. Like when my agent set up the meeting, I went to go meet him, and the band was still there, and they were just wrapping up the album. So they did their album there at that house. And as we were walking around, and he was like, this is where this is going to happen, and this is where this is going to happen. it was kind of cool. Like they were starting to move their stuff out, and the next week we were going to move our stuff in. So it's just kind of those things that like Dave comes up with something and he just it gets going. And yeah, it was that actual house that they recorded their album in. So it was a little meta, I guess.
Well, did you experience any hauntings while you were there?
No, not really. I don't think so. I mean, it definitely was an older home and it had some creepy feels to it.
Mhm.
I think it's actually since been demolished and like there's a new house being built on it. But no, it was, I never found anything there. In Brightburn house, there was some stuff,
Mhm.
but, because that house was from, pre-Civil War.
Oh wow.
Um, there's like a cemetery off to the side and stuff like that. But, they were always like, don't go to the basement. And we're like, okay, not going to the
don't
basement.
don't have to tell me. I had a friend who had like 180-year-old farm, and it was just the basement was the creepiest place you could go. Like the walls were
Yeah,
dirt because they just dug down. It was just,
right.
like, yeah, I'm good. Don't have to go get it. He's like, do you want to go get a beer from the basement? I'm good. I'm good. Now you also did Podix, I think it's called, with
Yeah.
Dave Grohl. Is that how they got you involved with Studio 666?
Well, no, it's funny because we started Studio 666 in 2020, early 2020, and then on like the 20th day of our shoot of like a 28-day schedule, the pandemic hit, and we got shut down along with the rest of Hollywood. Um, and then ended up Dave again had this idea of like doing the Podex commercial, and the producers from Studio 66 were like, "Hey, Dave wants to do this thing. You available? Tomorrow?" I was like, "Sure." And then we ended up just like, doing it 2 days later, talking about it, and then shooting it 2 days later, and that came out before 666 just because of they wanted to do a theatrical, so they were trying to
Yeah,
push that as far along as they could so they could try to get people into theaters to actually see it.
yeah. And I guess all the effects and topics were practical, like when he eats the sandwich and
Oh
everything.
yeah, yeah, that was
So,
he spit out a few. He almost snorted some
yeah.
real coffee, which is kind of funny. uh yeah, he's a trick. He it's very interesting that he's just kind of like, oh wait, we should do this, let's do this, and it's just kind of it's good times.
Now I want to jump to Emergency, which you've done. And how did you get involved with this film, and what was your sort of process on getting on the same page as the director in terms of the look?
Sure. Well, I actually have known Carrie Williams for since like 2003, I want to say. Um, so we've been shooting music videos together. We've done I don't know how many, um, dozens of music videos. It's probably in like 60 or 70 music videos together, and short films and things like that. So we have a really good rapport. We've become very good friends along the way. And So it was kind of already there was already kind of this connection we had, both our visual storytelling and understanding of like, our styles and stuff. And so they ended up, it was what it was a a thing called Project Involve, through Film Independent, and they shoot short films with
Hmm.
groups of filmmakers they put together. He used a cinematographer from the group, and he needed a crew, so I came in and gaffed for them. So I actually gaffed the short.
Yeah, I
Uh,
saw that when I was doing the research for this, and I was like, how did that jump happen? So I
yeah.
was going to ask you.
So if I was in if I would have been in the thing, then I probably would have shot it, or if he wouldn't have had to have the mandate that he had to use cinematographer.
Mhm.
But it was cool. It was actually kind of fun to gaff something because I hadn't gaffed something in a while, and it was really nice to like not be like to be able to separate yourself from all the problem solving that happens as the cinematographer. Um, so and then what ended up happening is the pandemic, and then the DP Jomo, who basically he was it was kind of like a sad thing that he was going to shoot the feature,
Mhm.
became unavailable because he just all his projects kind of pushed around so much, and everything got messed up. And so then it turned out he couldn't do it, and so the position came available. I interviewed with Temple Hill and Amazon, and and they got me on board, and it was great. And so working with Kerry, I already kind of know a lot of what he wants to do, and so we just jumped in.
Mhm.
We do what we normally do, is just kind of just throw out ideas, show pictures, find images from films, and just build everything emotionally. Like I like to build an emotional beat list throughout the film to kind of like really know like what each scene is about, so that visually I can help guide that.
Mhm.
Um, and then that then goes into like us just kind of honing in the look. Once we landed in Atlanta, is where we shot in Atlanta, we were able to like go to the locations and do like almost like photo boarding and everything like that too. Because Kerry's very visual. He's very much a lensing director. Like he loves to say like, I want to start here and then move around, and we're going to focus on that. And I would help him, maybe um, figure that out, or like make that a better shot, or like you know what, oh, that's I like this is what we're trying to do, but we can do this a little better by doing it over their head or doing something like that. And really that actually started once we started seeing that, once we started seeing the actors come in and meet, and and all that started to come together. The film really starts to like breathe a lot more, and like learn you can still
Mhm.
learn what it becomes, until by the first day you have a pretty good understanding, and then it typically takes a couple of days to like really be like, all right, cool. Like once you start seeing dailies and things like that, you really start you know understanding what the film, because the film, I feel like sometimes the films become something, um especially like when once you get actors in there, you had this idea of like what you wanted to do,
Mhm.
and then they do something different. You're like, that's pretty great. All right, I need now
Yeah.
I need to do something to also elevate this or express what they're doing better than what I had thought, because this just kind of, you know it's the whole, like, I don't know if you musician, or but like if you play with other musicians, or even like sports, like when you play with someone who's better than you, like it makes you better.
Mhm.
It's a very similar thing where it's like and once you want to elevate that sense. So, and Carrie very much wanted a lot of that, which made it challenging, and I love, that's what makes it, so much fun, and interesting.
Well, this breathing, like that sort of allowing it to change and evolve, do you find that stressful at all? Because I feel like, for at least for my personality, I'd want to be able to be like, okay, I know everything's going to work out, and you line up everything and it's going to work perfectly. And I feel like if I went in and someone was like, okay, we're just going to flip the table over and start like from scratch here, I'd be
Yeah.
like, so how do you prepare yourself for something like that?
I mean, I think, I guess I'm so used. I'm very much like, I guess, you know, uh, a program that I was in high school. Actually, we had one of our mentors there, in the theater program. He used to say, you need to learn to function in disaster and finish in style.
Hmm.
And that's something that's always stuck with me, in that like nothing ever goes the way I want it, but I'm going to make it as good as I can, even though that happens. So I guess I'm just kind of used to having to deal with things not working. I, though, love to plan very heavily. Like I have
Hmm.
shot lists, I have overheads, I have, any kind of, if we have storyboards, I have like all this like stuff, mostly because I can either modify or deviate from those once I have a plan. But also, like when you're in a production that's like this scale, or even smaller is worse, because basically like, oh, I need a techno crane today. Well, that's a lot of money, and if I don't make sure if I forgot to tell them it's today and we don't have a techno crane, now I can't do the things that we tried to do.
Yeah.
So it's just very much having that plan, and then also having that structure, so like the scene, what does the scene entail, and then now like I said, like, oh, now the actor comes in and does something different. You have that core idea, and you can kind of just realign it to what's happening, or bring it together so that it really works, as opposed to like just wing. Like, I don't like winging it. I mean, I'll do that occasionally on something, but not as like, you know, especially when I work with people like Carrie or Dave Yarvesky. They have a certain vision, and unless that is part of their vision, I don't like to do something different from that.
Now
You know.
you referred to them as a surprise. So like, what was the surprise that happened in Emergency that you're like you were able to adjust with, and you're really proud with the changes that came out? Is there a particular scene or moment?
Um, you know, I think the biggest surprise, which shouldn't be a surprise for me, was how good the actors were and their chemistry.
Mhm.
Like, um, it just they were so good that, like, I knew what I wanted to do going in, but then because they were so good, they made me want to like do an additional thing where, like, normally, like, you're doing a lighting setup or something, you're like, oh, this is what we're gonna do, and then we're gonna do here, cool, okay, that's great, and you would kind of go on from there, and you'd say, all right, let's shoot. It would stop me, and I would say, like, no, they're giving more, so what else can I do more to then add to this, you know? And they did that constantly. So it was a constant, like, oh man, like, step it up a little more, like, which is great, because it takes you, like, as an artist, you're like, you mean, once you start doing things out of your comfort zone, then you find things that actually end up working better than others, or doing things that just, you know, or taking risk on some stuff that, like, you didn't think would work, but then ended up working.
Mhm.
A lot of the stuff in the van, I was very, like, that was all done on on an LED stage, which was, I say stage, it was just two 20 by 12-foot walls of LEDs, and it was actually very difficult to shoot with them at first, and found ways of making it work, so that I think it sells pretty well on the in the film, that we're not on the actual street when they're in interiors.
So the LED walls are so new, this virtual production stuff. So what were the challenges that you said it was pretty difficult, but like what
Yeah.
did you learn from that others can learn from?
A big thing I learned is, like, the wall was too small, and so we had a van, right, and the van windows are actually much bigger than normal car windows. So, like, you're looking at a window that's, a third bigger than other windows, plus you have all these giant windows, right? So what was happening is we were running out of set behind them, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, that's where the wall ends. And if you brought it closer, then you started to actually see the fakeness of the LEDs. You started to
Mhm.
see the pixelation of them, right? Um, so sometimes we had to do that. Sometimes we were able to push it back to far enough within the shot so that it kind of blended and it felt real.
Yeah.
Um, and one thing I did to kind of help break that up was, we sprayed the windows with mist before we rolled on every shot, and that added an additional layer of diffraction,
Hmm.
and yeah, just like an additional third dimension for us to break up between them and the actors. There's also the fact that, like, sometimes, it's a video. You're basically shooting a video screen, so, like, if it's too bright or if there's a hot spot, it looks fake. So there was a lot of, like, learning to dim. Had to work with their engineer, who was, you know, showing us, basically doing the playback, to, like, adjust lighting and things like that, and then I would have to adjust our lighting within the car, to play with it. There was so yeah, in hindsight, I would want a bigger screen so that I could be further away.
Mhm.
Um, and then also I'm trying to think what else was a big, and then also I would shoot the plates a little differently. We shot the plates, and I wasn't able to supervise the plates, so they just came in a little hot on some stuff. So I would probably just go out and do a different pass on them or something like that. Um, there were only about two shots where we look out the front of the van
Yeah.
where the windshield was just too big, so we had to bring the screen so close, and it looks fake. So those are two shots that actually are VFX.
Okay.
Um, Other than that, everything else seemed to work just because we were able to find the right distance. Um, the lenses helped the fall off look good, and then the mist added that extra feel of like, oh, okay, there's some sort of atmosphere outside and things like that.
Now, do you think, because with technology, it advances so quickly that the prices come down. Do you think eventually LED walls will completely replace green screen, or do you think there will always be a low budget place for green screen?
Yeah, I mean, there's a certain thing you can get from green screens. Um, I haven't tried to do like the night reel is really easy. Like
Yeah.
I felt like if I had to do the daytime, and make it feel real, I've had more success making daytime look real with green screens
Hmm.
or blue screens than I have. I haven't done a daytime LED. I'm sure if I walked into like, one of the places that has the best setup, it would look
Yeah.
great, it would look pretty good. But when we're talking about like budgetary restrictions and everything, we were just kind of like, I can't afford that place. Um, so um, I think it has its times. It it's really nice like for us because it's also like it's in the can, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and there's like no like we're waiting for VFX, and you're just like, you know. So there's that about it, right? And I can use the VFX money on something else where, like for instance, when they're in the forest, like when we had our first VFX meeting in pre-production, I was adamant. I was like, I need, I need, I don't know how many shots we need to figure this out. If it's 100, if it's 200, but every time you see the van, you're gonna see my lights because it's a giant bubble with all glass,
Yeah.
and and I had balloons and things like that, and there were a decent amount of shots that we basically just would just paint out in the glass,
Yeah.
uh, the balloon, or maybe you saw the chimera or something like that in one of the things. Um, or like a couple times you saw the condor holding one of the big lights. You kind of see it, things like that. So you know, it's that trading off of like, all right, I don't need VFX money here, but I need VFX money over here,
Yeah.
and that's the beauty of it too. It's like everything's there. It's great, and the actors really liked it too because they could actually kind of look around, and it looked like
Yeah.
they could kind of see. And sometimes they were joking around. And the guy's like, "Pull over," and he's like, "I can't. The screen won't. The screen isn't stopping. Pull over the screen." They're just kind of joking around.
I
And
guess
but
they
it,
probably prefer it over tennis balls being like, look here.
oh yeah, and in green screen, yeah, it's like, oh yeah, pretend something's there, or like you just drove by the house, like you can't,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
makes it a little more, blends it a lot easier for them, I think.
Now, I have one last question for you. We've been stuck
Uh-huh.
in this pandemic for 2+ years. Depending on where you are in the world, you're stuck inside. So, is there a show or a movie you've discovered on streaming networks that people should check out?
Yeah, I actually just started watching The Offer on
Okay.
Paramount Plus, which is pretty funny because I started, uh it's like I started watching it and I was like, oh my God, yeah, that kind of happened to us. Like the experience of the filmmakers making The Godfather. I'm sure it's it's I'm sure they take some dramatic license in what's
Yeah.
going on, but there's stuff where it's like, yep, that we've had that problem before. Yeah, that's happened before. Oh yeah, we got yelled at for that, and
Yeah.
union stuff, sure. And then I think I'm only on like the seventh episode, and I'm waiting for like the next one to come. So I ended up just like watching The Godfather again, just kind of refresh.
It's a
And
great fucking film.
it's
It's
so
just
yeah, it's
so
just so
good.
funny. It's so good, and the people in the offer are really good, especially when they
Yeah.
have to like think like there's somebody playing Marlon Brando. It's like damn, like
Yeah. Like
or else
Marlon Brando playing a famous iconic role. Like so it's double duty. So
yeah.
well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Oh no, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here and really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, that's it for this week, guys. Make sure to check us out on filmmakeru.com or, of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. Today's episode of Filmmaker U is brought to you by our sponsors, OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking and computer needs. And it's also brought to you by our other sponsors, AJA. Make sure to check out aja.com so that you can see how they can help you in your post-production needs.